Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the world of natural living. And today we're so happy to have as our guest Melissa Gallico. Melissa is going to help us with an investigation into the root cause of the modern acne epidemic and its link to fluoride and how to remove it from your diet and lifestyle to support health and clear skin. Melissa is a former military intelligence officer, Fulbright scholar, and intelligence specialist at the FBI. She has instructed classes for FBI analysts at Quantico and provided intelligence support for FBI national security investigations. She graduated with honors from Georgetown University and holds a master's degree at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. And she lives in my own hometown of South Florida. So thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa.
Thank you for having me, Ellen.
Now, you have quite an amazing bio, and it seems to me, with what's going on in the world today, it might be interesting to discuss with you other topics involved with FBI and intelligence organizations and Quantico, and that I am sure you are absolutely a very well-known authority on this subject. But what brought you to write a book about the hidden cause of acne?
Well, it wasn't a direct route, that is for sure. I spent my career, as you described, working in intelligence. I've always focused on science and technology analysis. And during that time, I traveled a lot and I lived in a lot of different parts of the world. And I noticed that certain countries I lived in, I had just effortlessly clear skin, and I would come back to the States, even for a visit, like for a week, and I would start experiencing cystic acne, those painful welts that develop like around your chin and jawline, down my neck. Sometimes I even have them like the back of my neck, my shoulders, inside my ears. It was very painful and just really uncomfortable. And I just thought, this doesn't make any sense, because I would go to the dermatologist. I did all of the conventional treatments. I did Accutane. I did the creams. I did all different kinds of face wash products. And a lot of that did help, but I didn't understand why I didn't have any issue with cystic acne when I lived in Senegal or Tunisia or Scotland or the Caribbean. And I eventually, being an intelligence analyst, I thought, I need to figure this out. The dermatologists don't have an answer to this. They couldn't explain why it would just clear up so effortlessly when I lived overseas. And I eventually figured out it was the fluoride. I originally thought I had this bizarre condition. There's all kinds of weird allergies these days. I thought, I guess I am allergic to it. And I put a free guide online, just a PDF file. I just let people download it off of a random blog on the internet. And I started hearing from so many people who were able to clear their acne by learning how to avoid fluoride in their diet. And I thought, this is really strange, because I was looking at the numbers of downloads and I was looking at the numbers of testimonials and emails that were coming in. And I just thought, wow, this must be more common than I realized. And a woman sent me an email with the words, "Your book saved my life." And I read that and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to actually write a real book. So that's when I sat down to actually write a book about it. And I really delved into the literature on acne and the literature on fluoride. And that's when I realized, wow, this isn't a rare condition. It's not just a fluke that the people that have this condition are finding my free PDF file. It's actually very common, and we just don't know about it because no one's looking at this right now.
Well, I don't know about no one, because in holistic medicine, we've actually had these kinds of explanations about skin conditions, and I've been working in holistic medicine since 1964. But you're certainly true that conventional medicine does not recognize really diet even as a cause of acne.
That's so true. I meant fluoride in particular. Like no one is really looking at fluoride in acne. There's a lot of other research on fluoride and the thyroid, fluoride and the neurotoxicity of fluoride. But when I started talking about fluoride and acne, even the fluoride experts were like, oh, wow, I really didn't put that together. Like, let's study that more because it's just not something you really think about when you think of fluoride.
It's an amazing story, though, in terms of how fluoride even got to be in our water. And I do want to say that when my children were little, and they are now close to 45, so this is a while ago, I did start a committee where I lived, which was in a town on Long Island, to bring a lot of the research that was available then 45 years ago about the
Wow.
toxicity of fluoride to my local water authority. And we were actually able to get them to not put fluoride in our water. But and that was really amazing. In fact, we got them to not even put chlorine in our water daily, but instead test for microorganism levels and only include the chlorine when necessary. So, educating people can make a difference.
You're so right. It really does. And people ask me, how can we end water fluoridation? And that's exactly what I say. It's at the local level. It's just concerned citizens. A lot of times it's concerned moms going to the city council meetings and saying, we don't want this in the water. They present the scientific evidence and the city councilors listen because they want to make their constituents happy. They don't want to be forcing this people to medicate if they don't want it. And once you present the science, a lot of times those city council members are more receptive than you would think.
Well, especially if they live there and you're able to,
Exactly.
convincingly and scientifically, as you can do, discuss the negative effects of fluoridation of water, which let's talk about. Why is this fluoride even dumped into our water supplies?
Well, the official answer, obviously, is to prevent cavities. The dentists, the official, the mainstream dentists think that when you have a certain amount of fluoride in your water and it's topically, bathing the teeth like throughout the day, that it will make the enamel stronger and prevent cavities. But when I started digging, and I always assumed that was true, I always drank fluoridated water. I had the dental treatments twice a year, the fluoride trays when I went to the dentist, and I never questioned it until I started noticing this reaction on my skin. And then I started looking into the history of fluoride, and it's such a bigger story than that. And what most people don't realize is that fluoride was the leading airborne pollutant of the mid-20th century when fluoridation was first introduced. And those polluters were the biggest companies in the world. So anytime you have like deep mining operations like aluminum plants, phosphate fertilizer plants, even just brick and tile manufacturers, that is releasing fluoride, because it's a common element in the Earth's crust, it's releasing it into the atmosphere. And that airborne pollution caused more litigation than all of the other air pollutants in that time. And so these companies hired researchers, university researchers, to, first of all, prevent evidence that fluoride was completely safe, and then they would use those studies to fight litigation. They were being sued by farmers who said the fluoride was destroying their crops. Livestock, a lot of livestock were ruined because of fluoride pollution, and then even harm to humans. So they were facing litigation, and they were using this research to fight that. And then they also hired the researchers to figure out what they could do with this material, because they started facing regulations. They weren't allowed to release it into the atmosphere. They had to scrub it directly from the smokestacks. And it was their researchers who said, hey, what about putting it in the water to prevent cavities? And we all know how when there's a big financial interest in something, the science can be manipulated. It's corrupted by that financial interest, and we don't get to the truth of the matter. So that is the real story of why fluoride is added to the water supply. And you can call your local water supplier, and if they fluoridate, ask them, where do you get your fluoride from? And most likely, it's from a phosphate fertilizer plant in Florida. They take it directly from the smokestacks and transport it as hazardous material because it's highly toxic, and then they add it to your water supply. And they say that the dose makes the poison and that they're just putting in a small amount. But as we've seen over time, we start learning that these small amounts affect us in ways that we don't realize.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? The same thing with mercury in fillings in
Yes.
dentists. It's very similar story there. Why would we take things that have to be actually regulated by poison control and put it in our bodies?
Exactly.
It's
And I
really
could
wild.
understand. In the 50s, we didn't really understand toxicology as much as we do today. But when you have Nobel Prize-winning neuropharmacologists saying, we need to stop this, and the dentists are saying, no, it's completely safe because we've done it for 70 years, we really need to err on the side of caution and listen to, there's Harvard-trained toxicologists raising the red flag about fluoride, and they're just dismissed because we've done it for so long and we assume it's safe.
Oh, okay. So, that's amazing. I don't think they assume it's safe. I think it's just really a business decision of where they know that it's a place they can unload and make a profit from this toxic industrial waste products.
Right. Yeah, I do think there is an element to that. I was referring more to dentists. I think most dentists are well-intentioned with fluoride, and the public health officials, they really think that it's helping these communities. There's this idea that it's helping poor people who can't afford, toothpaste or can't afford dental treatments, can't afford to go to the dentist. So they think that it's an economical way to help them prevent cavities. But really, that research has been so corrupted by the corporate interest that you mentioned.
Well, yeah, the deeper you look into it, the worse it gets. Also, that fluoride that you discussed, and also let me remind you that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and my fascinating guest today is Melissa Gallico, and she is the author of The Hidden Cause of Acne, How Toxic Water is Affecting Your Health and What You Can Do About It. Great information, Melissa. So after you started opening up to that, wasn't it like very shocking for you to come across that information?
Yes, it was very shocking. I remember when I called my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, and told him about where the fluoride they were adding to our water comes from. I was like, it comes from the phosphate fertilizer plants. And he did not believe me. I had to show him on the CDC website. Like they mentioned, they describe it as a byproduct, but it could also be described as an air pollutant. It's just really hard to wrap your brain around that.
It goes in the air too. Also, what about the difference in fluorides? Because some people argue, well, fluoride occurs naturally in our environment, and sometimes they'll talk about the fact that green tea has fluoride. All of that is true, but it's not like all fluoride is the same.
Right. So the kind that they normally add to the water supply is, there's a few different names for it, but fluorosilicic acid or hydrofluorosilicic acid is this byproduct of the phosphate fertilizer industry. I think a lot of people, even dentists, assume it's pharmaceutical grade sodium fluoride, like the kind that they use in toothpaste, but it's a completely different chemical.
Right. Well, I think it's actually shocking.
It is. I agree.
So now, what are some of the health effects linked to this toxic fluoride, and how did you begin to discover that it was a key to you personally with your acne situation?
So for me, I had experienced acne for so long, almost 20 years, and just moving back and forth and seeing it clear up so easily when I lived in these places, I thought it was something in the water pretty early on because I noticed, as soon as I moved to a place and I started washing my face and drinking the water, I would start breaking out. So I thought it was something in the water.
Something
and my
linked.
first
You know
thought,
what, Melissa? We're going to ask you to just hold that thought, and we'll
okay,
continue
sure.
with it when we come back after the break.
Okay.
And I want you to know, listeners, that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. For more information on today's guest or topic, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
Paralyzed veterans Sean Halstead and Noah Courier.
I was Air Force from 93 to 98. I got hurt